Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to ForReel. Today, I'm your host, Thomas Stoneham-Judge, leading conversations with our team on the latest movie releases. And this week on ForReel, we are discussing 28 Years Later, as we actively try to avoid being attacked by dong-slinging alpha monsters and colorful ninjas. I've got Derrick Murray here, I've got Luca Mehta here, I've got Ethan Hunter here, and we've got a great show for you this week on ForReel. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hello.
All right.
I just want everybody to know that I am a dong swinging alpha on this. So just want to clear that up before we even get started. Either that or I am a Teletubby ninja who kills zombies.
Yeah, all right, whichever one you want to identify as. I'm glad that we know our positions 28 years from now after the rage virus takes over.
I'd definitely be like a super spreader for the rage virus. I'm getting infected so fast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
Luckily, for as much as I have a life on the internet, I'm very much an introvert. So this whole idea of like stay away from people, like I thrived in the lockdown. I was like, when we had an outbreak and we had COVID, my life was great. I was like, you mean I don't have to see people? This is awesome. I love it so much.
I don't even know where I would fit in this world. I think I would just be dead. It just wouldn't work out for me. So let's just be real. Ethan, where do you see yourself in the 28 years universe?
You said we should be real. I think we could be for real.
Hey,
all right.
Honestly, I'd probably be dead right away. I feel like maybe I would just get bored because we run out of electricity. How am I supposed to watch more movies?
This is so Gen Z. I love it. I mean, low-key,
what am I gonna do? Read books?
Low-key, I relate, you know?
Come on, they need to move.
Maybe
a flip book. I could make some of those.
Recreate your electricity Doc Brown style.
Yeah.
That definitely, I have never felt more elder millennial than
I will tell you that moment when his phone was at 1%, there was a lot of anxiety that I had. Like, but you're going to charge it, right? Why are you throwing it away? There's a charger somewhere, right?
Broke my heart.
Yeah,
that's so funny. Guys, we have a lot to talk about with this movie. I know that there's a range of opinions on this one, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. I want to start, though, with your history and experience with the 28 universe. I don't know what we call it. What's the official title? But let's get your history.
Universe.
The 28 universe. We're coining it here. The 28 universe. Ethan, we'll start with you. What's your experience with these movies?
Okay, so my experience with these movies started June 17th, 2025.
Oh, dang, he came with receipts.
Yeah, I pulled up my letterboxd here. I was always interested in 28 Days Later, more because of the filmmaking aspects of it and how they chose to use some crusty digital camera. I'm really interested in that whole style of using that kind of camera, I guess. I really like how it's used in something like The Celebration or Inland Empire. That's the name of the David Lynch one. I'm getting scared that I forgot it so soon after his passing. But yeah, I watched 28 Days Later on the 17th. I thought it was great. I watched 28 Weeks Later the day after on the 19th. I think it's a step down. I think everyone agrees with that opinion. I liked a lot of the ideas they were going for, and I was kind of shocked that in the intro for Years Later, they have like 3 seconds of a clip from the final act of 28 Weeks Later. And then 28 Years Later, I saw on the 19th, so 2 days ago, and that, I think it might be my favorite one.
That's great. Good to hear your experience. Luca, what's been your history with the 28 universe?
Well, I've had a rough history with the 28 universe because I guess I just wasn't paying attention when I saw it for the first time because I hated it. I really hated 28 Days. And it was weird because like whenever I taught my criticisms about it, like looking back on it, it was like I just straight up had not seen the movie. And so I just gave it a second chance because, you know, years was coming around the corner. And I was just like, holy shit, I've never been so wrong in my life. It's really good. I mean, shocker, everybody, you know, it's 28 Days Later. But like it really struck like an emotional nerve with me. And I've always been like a really big fan of Alex Garland's screenplays, bar Men. So I think it's probably his best until Years. It's just front loaded with so many great ideas. This stuff with Killian just walking through London is like it's iconic enough for me that I not even like have to talk about it at like great detail. And so yeah, I had a enemies to lovers relationship with Days, and I saw Weeks probably like 4 or 5 days ago, and it was funny because I mean I didn't like totally I don't know, I thought it was okay, but I was watching with my girlfriend and they just wanted the kids to die like the whole time. They thought the kids were the most annoying characters in like horror movie history. And honestly, I kind of get it. Like if there's a pandemic going on, you're quarantined, why are you going out to the suburbs? Stay inside. You know,
there is so much we can say about kids in the 28 universe after 28 years later.
I got a hot take.
I just think maybe it hits a little harder because we're post-pandemic, and just seeing somebody not follow COVID protocol or just quarantine protocol. You know, I mean, I kind of understood Tom Cruise in that video where he yelled at all those people for breaking protocols. I'll say that much. But Years,
I don't ever want to see it again, ever.
Me either. But Years, I thoroughly loved. I did a little bit of Danny Boyle prep just because I knew that his late period stuff is a little more divisive. But I had a blast. I had so much fun with it, and I saw it again yesterday, and honestly, I cried like a lot.
Interesting. And Derrick, give me your history with the 28 universe.
Yeah, so I'm old enough to have seen both of these films in theaters at their release.
Damn.
I think I might be older than both.
Calm down.
Combined. I know. Goddamn Gen Z. And I somewhat similar to Luca with 28 Days. I remember seeing 28 Days, and I wasn't really in my film era of like, oh yeah, no, I genuinely love cinema on all levels of like filmmaking and craft and all the things that matter. So I was pretty dismissive of it. I remember thinking like, yeah, it's pretty good, but like, what's up with the grainy look? Like, why does this look like an old VHS tape? And for those of you that don't know, we used to have a VHS tape where you put it in a VCR. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I remember this. No, I remember this.
Format, actually.
No idea what you're talking about, Derrick. I was born in 2015.
I wasn't really aware of who Cillian Murphy was, who he was going to become. Naomi Harris shows up, very early on in her career. Which is just wild to see her in this movie. But over time, I've revisited 28 Days Later quite a bit. And every time I return to it, I just get something new. And now, that cinema is really just a huge part of my life. I genuinely think 28 Days Later is a horror masterpiece. I think in the genre itself, I think it just stands really, really tall. I think it is one of Garland's best scripts. And I say that as somebody who is actually a defender of men. I don't care. I'll die on that hill. But I think those two together, I think this is probably 28 Days is their best collaboration. They haven't collaborated a lot, and they clashed heads quite a bit, which is amazing that 28 Days even works because of how different they wanted those movies to be. But I think Boyle and Garland are just absolutely cooking in 28 Days Later. It's absolutely phenomenal. 28 Weeks Later, I think we can all agree it's just a massive step down. I can see some people trying to do a little bit of revisionist history and trying to reclaim it, which fine, whatever. There's some gnarly violence. I agree that the kids are probably they're the worst of anything. in my opinion. And I think 28 years later, I have never felt more vindicated for not having children. When I see 28 years later, I'm just like, see, this is why you don't have kids. They ruin everything. I don't know if that's the takeaway, but that's what I took away from it. So
you said for years or weeks that is
both.
Like kids suck.
Both years and weeks. I was actually just thinking about it. I was just thinking about it because I think 28 Days is the only one with a kid, which is Hannah, who actually is productive in these stories.
Yes.
And that, you know, I totally get Derrick's perspective here because so just to clarify my experience, I've seen bits and pieces of 28 Days. I've never watched it in its entirety until this week. And so I unfortunately wasn't able to watch it in its time when it came out, which I'm sure was very profound for the genre, and I respect it. Right? I have a hard time thinking about it not as a zombie movie. I know there's a lot of discourse about this being zombie, not being a zombie film. But and maybe
Luca's
we can get into that.
Let him say something.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. When you get into the semantics, it's just boring. Like, it's a zombie movie. Who cares?
It is okay, great. I'm happy we can establish that because why would you make a movie that's not a zombie movie, but then make them so zombie? You know, like everything about them is zombies.
Literally calls one of them a zombie. So yeah. I feel like it's fair game at this point.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right, great. Luca. It's fine if you want to have a broader discussion or a more detailed discussion, nuanced discussion about monsters that truly live among us and the monsters of humanity itself, which is something I think both 28 Days and 28 Years really touch upon, of just the humanity and the apocalypse. But to just discount them and pretend this movie is not a zombie movie first, everything else second, like, come on, guys. Be real.
I'm really happy we can get that out of the way because I will likely refer to these as zombie movies frequently, and I don't need listeners like flipping tables over. So we have established that. So I went, and like most people went and watched 28 Days in its entirety, and then 28 weeks later I paid kind of attention to because that movie just wasn't dialing into that film as much as I love baby Imogen. Look, Imogen Poots, I love her, right? I follow her work. I had a chance to meet her at TIFF. I love her, and it was cool to see her this early on in her career, but yeah, it just had a hard time dialing into that film. So and that all, I think, did an interesting job of preparing me for 28 years later, but maybe not in the best ways, because I think what I wanted out of 28 years wasn't what I spent time watching 28 Days and 28 Weeks watching, and perhaps we'll get into that. So initial reactions, let's go ahead and go around and get initial reactions for 28 years later. Derrick, remind us of what your feeling was with 28 years.
Yeah, I walked away. I'm very conflicted. I know that there are a lot of extremely positive reviews, and a lot of my fellow colleagues and our fellow colleagues are kind of Luca are just, you know, their praise for this movie. I feel like I watched something different. I feel like I watched a completely different film. But I'm also, and I think Thomas and I kind of talked about this after he had watched it. This is more of a frustrating experience than like a bad movie, because I don't know that I can call 28 years later a bad movie, because it's really not. It's just a really frustrating one. And I think there are some things that really hold it back from being the great film that I think some people, including people on this podcast, are going to call it. But there is some incredible craft. Danny Boyle, like, just when that man steps behind the camera, whether or not you like the subject, like, that guy knows how to make a movie. It's got that same kind of Soderbergh effect where Soderbergh experiments and he does stuff and some stuff lands and some stuff doesn't, but you can never look at Soderbergh's work and say he doesn't know how to make a film. Like, the man knows how to make a movie, and Boyle definitely does. And I think Garland, for the most part, is pretty competent in script writing. He's an incredible script writer. But for me personally, he's kind of 0 for 3 in whatever this late stage writing is. And I think he needs to take a much longer break from cinema, because I feel like he's really struggling to just create a complete film. I know that this is part of a new trilogy, and that's all well and fine. But my complaint has always been, when you're going to do that, you need to make the film first, not the film you want to make next. And this movie, especially, not to jump too far ahead to spoilers, but like that ending just made it feel like this is not part one. This is just a prologue to part one, which is actually the movie we want to make. And that just makes it so frustrating. There are some genuinely emotional moments here. I think performances are just out of this world. Comer in particular, where I don't think she's actually given a lot to do on paper. And that woman just like, I don't know what she reads, but she just reads something different than everybody else and just operates on a completely different level. It doesn't matter what you put her in and what role, what character you give to her. She is going to do something with it and just sink her teeth into it. And so I found myself having a lot of frustration as I'm watching the story unfold, but then also feeling really emotionally connected. Like when Luca tells me like, oh yeah, I cried the second time. I get it. Because there were moments in this movie where I was like, I really hate what the script is doing, but I am kind of invested in this. And I don't know why I'm getting a little choked up in these emotional things. Like I don't care about this, but I'm kind of caring about this. So I have a lot, I'm really just conflicted about it. And honestly, the last thing I'll say is I'm kind of excited to fight with Luca about it, because maybe it'll help me and Ethan probably, but maybe it'll help me bump it up just a little bit, like give it a little bit of a better rating than what I had when I walked away from the first time. So
yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about conversations about this movie, because I will echo the fact that I don't think it's a bad movie. I think the spectrum of opinions on this movie land between really great and mid, right? I don't know, like, if I haven't come across any valid reviews calling it like terrible just yet. Correct me if someone wants to send me your link, fine, whatever.
Emphasis on valid.
But let's
no
toss
valid criticism can call this a bad movie.
Luca, let's kick this over to you and let the fight begin.
Well, I want to be a little
me and
subversive.
Derrick.
I'm going to extend an olive branch actually and say that I totally get Derrick. Honestly, when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this is going to be divisive. And I'm honestly quite surprised that it's doing like better box office wise than I expected. I thought it was just kind of, I mean, not come and go, because it was definitely going to like, make the rounds in like the film nerd spheres. But, like it's got a pretty good box office. I mean, it's like only Saturday, so I don't want to like jump the gun or anything, but the predictions are looking pretty good so far. But yeah, like that said, like there are some decisions that are not going to totally, people aren't going to totally jive with them, like especially the ending, which I definitely had to do a little Googling, because I'm not British. So, there's cultural implications to the ending that I just did not understand, partially because I am American and also Canadian, and also because I was born in 2002 and all this stuff that's they're referencing had already happened. So I had no clue who like Jimmy Savile was. I mean, I knew what the Teletubbies were, so I mean that's good. But everything else, like it was really, it was kind of like a mind game. But that said, I do think that I will say I think this is probably Garland's best screenplay in a while, just because it really put. I mean, how much do we want to go into spoilers here? Because I don't want to.
Let's hold off on spoilers for right now.
Okay, I want to be careful.
We'll come back around to it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, it's not really like a spoiler to say that the pandemic has put a lot of stuff into perspective for Boyle and Garland. And being somebody who grew up in the pandemic, or not grew up, but like came of age, like my senior year in high school was online. So coming up in that era. It was a little surreal, but at the same time, it really put things into perspective of, what the world was like now. I mean, the COVID death toll as of right now is like 7 million, and that's twice the size of Chicago. Like that's, I mean, and I remember that's what inspired Garland in the first place to write 28, because he read an article about a virus that like infected like a bunch of cows, and they had to kill 5 million cows or some shit. And almost 20 something years later, we lost millions of people. And just, the grave loss that we've felt, not only like human wise, like, death, but the loss of innocence, I think, is also something that has been looming over us for a really long time. I have a friend who teaches pre-K to a bunch of kids, and these are kids who were born in 2020, 2021. They were shut in most of the time. And that makes me think about Alfie Williams' character in this, Spike, who's, he's what, 12? And this is 28 years later. So, if you do the math, this is a hard world for kids to live in now. And a lot of what 28 is focused on, especially in the opening scene of 28 Days, is the idea of exposure, not only to viruses, but to pain, to rage, to anger, to just all of the horrible stuff that happens in our world. And I think it translates so beautifully into the lens of basically a corruption arc for Spike as a child to see how horrible the world really is.
Interesting. I'm going to think a little bit on that. I think you make some very valid points. That's kind of adjusting my perspective a little bit, but let's see what Ethan has to say. Ethan, what was your reaction to 28 years?
So I'm not, I wouldn't say that I'm like the zombie genre guru. Like, I haven't seen some of the most popular stuff, like Walking Dead, but because of how large it is in pop culture, I kind of have like osmosis of the stuff that I haven't seen. And I think going back to 28 Days Later, and seeing what that did, it kind of pioneered a lot of the modern zombie genre. Because before, you had stuff like Night of the Living Dead, where they're more so monster movies with like some commentary on it. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that 28 Days Later really was the inception of the survival zombie, and taking a focus more on how it affects us rather than just the monsters in general. Like, I find the Last of Us games, I haven't seen the show, so I can't speak on those. Looks like shit. But the games are really good, and they focus a lot on, especially the second game, the characters and how they progress inside of a zombie apocalypse. Granted, that's a worldwide thing, and whereas 28 is quarantined specifically to one place in the world. And I think that's something that it has over literally anything else. And there's a lot more avenues for it being unique and having its own voice and its own commentary, with it being by Brits set in Britland. So I think the decision to make it 28 years instead of days, weeks, months, I think jumping to years, not only because it's been so much time, but I think it was a really brilliant idea to bring it to where we are, basically. Especially when there's characters such as the Swedish soldier. I think, despite the amount of time that character is in the movie, I think it adds a lot of depth to fleshing out the world. And despite only, I think it's like $60 million, the budget, they're able to really, within the writing and the direction, make it feel a lot bigger than it is. I think the locations they use for shooting are really breathtaking, and a lot of the photography, the cinematography is really, really great. And I love the innovations they have with the the multi iPhone camera rig. I don't know if you saw an image of that
Mhm.
on social media, but I saw that before going to the movie. I'm like, what is this used for? Like, surely there's something. And you know when it happens, and you're like, that's awesome. Like, we're using the third movie in a trilogy to create brand new filmmaking techniques. It's awesome. Like, again, when I said more in the intro, where I was really interested in the visual choices in the first film, it's definitely not just a flex being like, we shot this on an iPhone. Like, they really take advantage of the pros and cons of what they can do with that. So I think from a technical perspective, it's really impressive. I think for standing out in its genre, it's really impressive. And I think I gotta say, I gotta disagree with this Derrick fellow here, that the writing is not good. I was sitting there listening to you, and you're
I saw your face. Anyone who has this on video, if you're watching, yes,
yeah,
Ethan was making
you were like,
faces.
yeah, I also just kind of do that, just stimming, I guess. But when you were like, oh. Yeah, there were subpoints when I was kind of feeling something. I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's like the script being good or the writing being well done. I don't know. Like, it could be because of that. Like, there's a connection there.
It's okay,
It wasn't
Derrick.
by accident, I don't think.
No. Listen. My quick argument to that is Jodie Comer is just better than the script that's given to her. That's what that was. That's what I'm going to stand on.
I can agree with that, but only because Jodie Comer is the GOAT.
Yes.
Is it Comer, Comer? What do we say?
I add an L, which I don't even think is in there. And like, that's just.
Oh my
Call
goodness.
her by any name. She is the GOAT. She is
the GOAT. Yep.
And I don't know if I'm the only person here who did this, but I didn't watch a single trailer for this movie until yesterday, which was a day after seeing the movie. Yes. So yesterday morning while I ate my breakfast, I'm like, I'm going to check out that trailer because I saw Luca's, I don't know if it was Luca, but somebody made a tweet about the trailer, and I watched it like 4 times back to back because the original trailer, I'm like, this is awesome.
Wait, so you skipped all the marketing?
Yeah, like whenever there was like a trailer or like a behind the scenes on screen, I put on my noise canceling headphones and like an earbud under them. And I would just go on my phone and like put my hat down, and it's like, yeah, I'll just go see the movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
I absolutely applaud this behavior.
I am championed on that one, dude. Hell yeah.
I started doing this in 2017 because I didn't want to see stuff for Last Jedi and Avengers Infinity War, which was probably the best time to do that. Well, sorry to just go completely off topic, but yeah, Infinity War, it had a lot of fake stuff in the trailer anyway, so it doesn't matter. But there are certain things that when I see something in a trailer, my brain is like, when is this coming? Or when is this line of dialogue coming? Or
Sinners is the most egregious about this.
Yeah.
Sinners
I saw the
violated
first
this so
trailer one time in the theater. I saw that trailer, and then I just completely forgot about it.
Sinners
so
trailer 2 spoiled that Stack got turned. I was so mad.
Yeah, I'm so glad
that.
I didn't know about that. Like, going into it, I'm like, I mean, one of them's probably gonna become a vampire, but then it was like, Haley Steinfeld they turn. Like, it was really interesting. Like, to anyone listening, I really recommend wearing just completely trying to shut out as much marketing as you can. Not granted. I made a tweet saying, I'm glad I didn't see this trailer. It's awesome, but I'm glad I didn't see it. And there's a lot of people being like, oh, this was misleading. It was way better than the movie. Or like, I expected something totally different. And I feel like I'm the only person to experience that. Like Derrick, when you saw the trailers, and then watched the movie, were you expecting something different than what we got?
Yeah, I think so. And what I'll say quickly on this point is I think 28 years later, I think I've actually hurt my experience with 28 years later by watching both 28 days and 28 weeks in close succession to seeing it. I actually think the distance between them actually makes the movie better. Because if you watch those two, you're going in thinking that this is a continuation of the two films that we've seen. And it's really not. It really is kind of all by itself. It's starting something new in the similar world, but it is so far disconnected. And which, if you have something that's taking place 28 years later after the last one that we just saw, like, why would this be more of the same? And I think I definitely hurt myself because I did. I watched 28 and I got through about half of 28 weeks, but 28 days was fresh in my mind when I sat down to watch 28 years. And I actually do think that was a disservice to 28 years later. Now knowing that distance in the film setting, but also the distance in kind of real life and how far you want to watch these movies, I think it's important to not just avoid the marketing and, just watch the movie for its own merits, but trying to constantly connect it back to what you experienced in 28 days. I think it's going to bring down 28 years later quite a bit. So,
I'm gonna jump in here and agree with both Derrick and Ethan about expectations going into the movie. I mean, I've never been one, and I was talking with a good friend of mine who's very excited about seeing this movie. He's seeing it today, and so he obviously asked my opinion, and I had a less than favorable reaction. But I told him, go in with high expectations. Like I don't like when people tell me to lower my expectations, and so I would never say that. But when it comes to this movie, I totally agree. Firstly, with trailers, avoid trailers because it sets expectations to get your butt in the seat, not necessarily to properly prime you for the film. I think teaser trailers should be it. I don't know why teaser trailers aren't just the defaults. Like, I'm sold, guys. Stop giving me more marketing. You just take my money
any
now.
Dialogue in trailers, having just the
vibe.
Yeah, just the poem and the old recording. It's like, this is
so
everything.
Good.
I don't need to hear anything. And
so good. I'll say too, just real quick, the teaser trailer for Together is with just that classical music. I'm like, speaking as someone who's seen the movie, like that's it. That's all we should have ever gotten. We should have never gotten anything else. And that's it. Because I watched that and I was like, shit, I can't wait to see this movie. And then I was like, wait, no, I've already seen it. I've already seen this movie.
I think with years, I feel like there's I don't know. So as a Last Jedi fan, I love to be subverted. Yeah. So I watched the trailer for when it dropped, maybe like last year or something like that, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And like, it went viral, Rudyard Kipling's Boots, or the Taylor Holmes recitation of Rudyard Kipling's Boots became like a big thing on like the internet. People were really digging it or whatever. And it kind of just remained like a little umbrella over us. But I feel like the trailer sold it as a lot more like action horror. And the movie itself is like somber and upsetting and like just I won't go so far as to call it slow just because Danny Boyle is on like steroids for most of the time, but like it really moves. I don't know, it takes its time with itself, and I wasn't really expecting that from like this madness inducing trailer with this crazy poem over it. Like it was a lot more subdued than I thought that we were going into.
Yeah, absolutely. The expectations that we set for ourselves, I think, are things that we are in control of. But when you have marketing kind of manipulating what you should be expecting, I think that can be problematic. But I do want to elaborate a little bit on Derrick's point about watching 28 days later, because one of my big issues with 28 years later, and I think I can avoid spoilers here. We'll get into spoilers here in just a minute. But one of my issues is, why are we changing so much of the rules around the infected? Now we have variants. Now they can get pregnant. Now they there's so much. And logically, yeah, 28 years is enough time for this stuff to happen. But I just watched 28 Days 3 days ago. So your world is conflicting with my world. and I do think that has a lot to do with my experience. Ethan, what are you thinking?
The tagline is in 28 days it began, in 28 weeks it spread, in 28 years it evolved.
Mm-hmm. I know, and logically it makes sense. Like in the movie, I was constantly thinking I don't like how much has changed because I want to see that evolution. So just going from 28 days into 28 years, I don't know, maybe a 28 months might have helped pad that gap where we can experience, oh my gosh, there's an evolution happening, it's mutating, it's whatever, right? They can get pregnant, they can live normal lives, although I can't figure out how you can a rage virus can allow you to raise a kid. So that was something that kind of scratched my brain a little bit in this movie.
It is definitely one of those things where the way that Ethan lays it out, logically that's where things should go. Right? Mm-hmm. Viruses mutate. Viruses, their whole purpose is to try to survive. Right? Mm-hmm. And so whatever it takes for a virus to survive, that's what it's going to do. And if you give it a long enough timeline, the virus is going to mutate into something that cannot be killed by what we have currently. And so logically, that makes sense. But then when you start to really think about it too hard, and you start to think about the rage virus itself, and now you just get all these little bits and pieces of oh yeah, they're like Neanderthal villages and little hunter-gatherer groups with an alpha from Snyderverse or something. It just when you start to think on it too hard, it starts to just get a little messy for me. And so I there's just this conflict of yes, logically this is probably where things should go, but the way that it unfolds to me, it just, I don't know. They just don't blend. It just doesn't balance to me in a way. And maybe you're right, Thomas. Maybe it is just, I want 28 days later, but that's not what 28 years later is. And it's not what it's supposed to be. And I have to wrestle with that. And I'm still wrestling with it, even as we're talking it out.
Well, oh, no, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead, Luca. After you talk, we'll go into spoilers, and I have a question to transition into that.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Derek, because that was something I noticed when I was watching T2 Trainspotting, is that Boyle didn't feel like doing just Trainspotting again. He wanted to mature the story. He wanted to mature the characters. He wanted to create something wholly organic within Trainspotting. And I feel like he did that again with Years, where and I feel like if you really wanted a follow-up to Days or Weeks, you'd be disappointed. But I feel like, especially in our current landscape with legacy sequels and all that bullshit, it's really nice, honestly, that I didn't need to watch 28 Days or Weeks later to go into Years. Yeah. I saw Years I watched Weeks probably an hour before Years, and I didn't like Weeks, and I got out of Years damn, I didn't even need to do that. So I think with the virus evolving, I think this whole franchise, I don't know, without sounding stupid or glib, it's 28 days later, it's after. We don't get any explanation as to what happened, why. We get the why, because we saw the little bits of the activists breaking the monkeys out, but we don't know anything else. It's just we have to fill in the blanks, and maybe we aren't supposed to fill in the blanks at all. We're just here at this point. And honestly, tying it back to what I was saying about the pandemic, we can. We all these conspiracy theorists can point to the why, the Wuhan virus in the lab and whatever. But what's more important is the effect that it's had on the people that it's impacted. And albeit it would be a little interesting to see how a standard infected becomes an alpha or anything like that. But also I revel in the ambiguity. Yeah, sure, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I absolutely admire everyone who really just kind of embraced what it was and kind of went with it. So yeah, and I think if I would love for us to just like sit down and like commentate through this movie. I think there could be a lot of great commentary while watching it. But we're going to transition into the spoiler segment of this movie. So if you have not seen 28 Years Later, as we have explained, you don't need to wait and watch 28 Days and Weeks first. Okay, just go see 28 Years. You will be fine. That's how this works. And so I want to transition into the spoiler segment of this because with a question, which is, what is the most noteworthy scene for you, the scene that stands out the most to you, good or bad? Because I think that I'll start with my example, which I think encapsulates a lot of what I had a problem with this movie. And now that we're in the spoiler segment, I guess the scene or sequence that really stood out to me in this movie was when Eric showed up. Because I loved Eric being in this movie. Like, the comedy that dude brought to this script, where there was no comedy at all. Like, it went from this like dire like horror drama, and then Eric showed up, and now it's just a straight up comedy. Like, and I loved that new tone. And I mean, I guess I'm just a fan of like horror comedy in general. But I think adding comedy to this, I was actively thinking, as my audience is in rapturous laughter over the shit this dude says, I'm actively thinking, why isn't this in more of the movie? Like, why is this so isolated to this one character? And I think I point this out because I really enjoyed the sequence that he was there, but it speaks to what I would have liked more from the movie. It speaks to how disjointed I kind of felt that the movie was, going from the horror drama to a comedy and then right back into horror, and just like not really being able to be cohesive about that. And I think that's really what I kind of lingered on after the movie is like, there's segments of this movie that are really good. The segment with Eric is really good. And I liked that, but then you go back into what it was, and then there's another segment that's really good. So anyway, that's the scene that stood out to me. Ethan, let's go with you. What's the scene that stood out to you and that really like stuck with you after the movie?
Memento Mori. Remember death. Remember that you'll die.
Avada Kedavra. Yes.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is a. I think it's such a fantastic thing to do. I think the whole structure of the movie, it works greatly, where it's like, yeah, of course this guy, he's a weirdo. Look at the stuff he's doing. But a lot of the themes within the movie revolve around cultures and different cultures of people, because obviously you'll have somebody who perceives everything a lot differently. It tries to humanize the zombies, the infected, by literally having one give birth to a human, which was super out of left field for me, but I fuck with it heavy. Like, that was awesome. Just having that as a scene, and it's like, how does it move from here? How is the infected just going to attack right away? Like, what moves on? Was the alpha connected to that person personally? Like, it has a lot of I think like that whole stretch of the birth of the child to the death of the mother, I think it's like a really great, like, just short sequence within the bigger picture. And I feel everything towards Jodie Comer's character dying and moving on. And I remember, Derek, you said something about it feeling more like a setup rather than its own thing. I hear this argument all the time for Across the Spider-Verse, and I still disagree with it there, because all the characters have arcs that they go through. Or here, like, it's especially Spike, where it's literally his journey of being like a pussy who can't do shit to taking down a bunch of infected and surviving in Alpha and learning to grow past his family and move on and become his own person. Now having to look out for somebody else other than himself rather than being provided for. And I think one of the reasons why I love this movie so much and why I think it was so important for it to be years later and come to this point is because of how much death has happened. And I think that really works towards Ray Fiennes, what's his character? Dr. Ian, his
Kelson.
whole his whole shrine and dedication to life and death within both sides of humanity, what is and what was. And that's really compelling to showcase that within Skeleton, because he says something where here they're the same, it's still the same. Deep down we're all the same. You can have kind of commentaries such as that. And
this is
the way they
no, these are very interesting points. I think the Memento Mori segment was that's a great theme to have here. I wish that these dots connected for me the way that they did for you, because I absolutely did not connect the birth of the child to the death of the mother. I spent the whole time thinking, why is this kid here?
It kind of resolves itself because Spike names the kid Isla, like Jodie Comer's character.
Yeah,
it's the
that's
cycle
true.
of life within death.
Yeah, this conversation is going to make my second watch very interesting, and that's why we do this. That is why we do this.
I think round two pretty much. Before I go into my scenes or whatever, round two really heals a lot of wounds. Without saying too much.
Okay. Well, okay. Don't spoil it for me on my second watch.
Yeah.
There was one more tiny little thing is that I appreciate there being that comedic relief with Eric, the Swedish soldier, right before it gets really upsetting, because it's again subversion that Luca was talking about, where it lowers your guard a bit more to make what comes just that more effective. And I think maybe that's again what was affecting Derrick when he's like, why is this hitting me? It's because you're it's starting to ease you off of the tension. The tension is really you could cut it within the air. It's so sharp. I don't know what you get what I'm going for. You get the vibes of what I'm saying. But I think the emotional moments are really effective, and I'll move it on to the next person.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too, that I'm also going to have to think more about. Wow. Luca, the scene or sequence that stood out to you and that really stuck with you.
Well, I'm actually glad that you guys have been mentioning the Eric stuff, because once we kind of pivoted, once the story kind of pivoted to the Swedish soldiers, I kind of felt like, do we need to be doing this right now? And Ethan, you actually, both of you guys brought up a really interesting point of the world moves on. It's just, it's still going. There's no really two ways about it. And there was just, there was really great comedic relief with Eric, and showing Spike, his girlfriend with the lip fillers and shit. And
So
Spike's
good. So good.
No, my theater was cackling like hyenas.
I know I've been really harsh on Garland's script, but everything Eric does in that sequence and everything he does with Spike, unassailable writing, just absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, keep going.
You guys have brought up so many great points to the point where I have just ideas ping-ponging my brain, if you threw a bouncy ball in an enclosed space. But I think one thing I want to touch on is I think, Thomas, you brought up the idea of the humanity being under the infected. And so it's interesting. One of my friends brought up an interesting idea, how the rage virus inverts our sensibilities to where our kind of darker sides simmer under these fronts that we have, whereas the rage virus kind of inverts them. So like the front, or the bad side of us just comes out first. And so the idea of the humans still being there, and maybe we can tie this back to the semantics of they're not zombies, but like the opening scene of the priest getting infected, and then leading the infected out, becoming their leader. It really, I don't know, it teased what Jack O'Connell's character is going to be doing in the next one as like this more messianic figure. And that's what I kind of like the second watch kind of healed the wound, because you spend the whole movie basically going like, okay, how are we going to tie this into the opening scene? Mm-hmm. And then, the Teletubby ninjas show up and you're like, oh, there they are. But when
I'd kind of forgotten about it by that point.
Yeah, I feel the same way about 28 Days Later, where I kind of forget about the opening scene and like I just remember Killian waking up. But man, well, God, this movie is so interesting. It's just I'm like racking with ideas. I think just. The idea of the human, with the pregnancy as well, the maternal instinct of the infected dominating the infection itself into a moment of kind of, it's like an infection ceasefire. It really reminded me of the big climactic moment in Children of Men, where everybody puts their guns down and just, focuses on the baby, which is, because a baby isn't just a baby, it's a sign of hope. And I guess
what is happening for me right now? Am I starting to like this movie more?
Thomas, I know.
What is happening?
Luca, your description of just a bouncy ball going on in your mind, I feel exactly the same way, because again, I didn't walk away from this movie being like, that was trash, I hated it. There were a lot of things that I liked, and there were a lot of pieces that I liked, and I was critical of Garland's script, but as everybody kind of collectively have started to just kind of break these things down, I really do feel like I might have missed something. I feel like I do need to watch something on a second watch, because
it is
a lot
movie.
of these, it really is. And the more you guys unpack it and the more we talked about it, I still think I still think some of these issues are sticking with me, but the way that you guys are finding ways to kind of frame them, I don't know that they make it necessarily better. Obviously I have to sit down and watch it, but I did walk away feeling like, wow, both Boyle and Garland have a lot of ideas and there's a lot of pieces. I don't know that they all fit together to make a complete puzzle, but a lot of these individual pieces I do like, and the way that we're kind of walking through them, kind of, highlighting the scenes and highlighting the themes, they're starting to make me think like, maybe this does make a little bit more sense than I gave it credit for. So I might actually have to watch it again.
I'm thinking about this because I think this also speaks again to the disservice of watching 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later, because those movies are not nearly as dense as what you guys are explaining here.
Yeah,
I think that they're going through a lot of when I watched 28 Days Later, I was like, oh, cool. So like the first 4 seasons of Walking Dead, like you guys did it in one movie, right? Like that, and that's what it is, right? It's a survival journey. It's a bit of a road movie. Like there's, and that's what it is. There's not a whole lot more to think about it, except for, there's themes there for sure. But like when you watch 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later, or at least when I didn't expect to go into 28 years later with this much density. And maybe watch even more to Derrick's point about watching those in such close proximity to this movie. Maybe that's a mistake. Maybe that's not just ill-advised. Maybe it's actually a mistake.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I'll share my scene that sticks out a lot, and some of it is just a juxtaposition of how things are framed, and this is a compliment to Boyle's filmmaking. So I actually really love the kind of first half of the movie in its totality. But from them leaving on the causeway to everything that happens to them, that to me is my favorite part of Spike growing up, where he's raised and trained to believe that this is the rite of passage, this is what we do, this is everything I've trained for, and then once he gets out there, it's all of it. He suddenly realizes that, like, oh yeah, none of this is anything like what is actually happening on the mainland, what is actually surrounding us from this island. That distance on that causeway, he steps into a completely different world. And no matter how much his father has tried to prepare him, no matter how much the village and the community has tried to prepare him for this moment, once he gets there, the world is just not what he was told. And then even when they get back, like, his dad is painting a completely different picture of what actually happened on the mainland. He's feeding in to this story that they tell themselves, living on this remote island. And he is like, wait, no, that's not what is happening at all. That's not what happened. That's not what's happening. That's not how I feel. Like, this, I'm not a hero. This is awful. And then, you know, it kind of leads into like the family breaking apart. I always struggle with kids making the stupidest decisions on the face of the earth. And even when they're motivated by genuine emotion, this idea of like, yeah, I'm going to take my mom who doesn't know who she is, and we're going to walk back out onto the fucking causeway. Like, that stuff just, I was like, kill all the children. Like, I just like, go back to the very beginning of the movie and just slaughter all of them. But I mean, I get it, but it's just one of those tropes in movies that just drive me nuts when it surrounds children. And I think once we start to do that, I think that's when things kind of start to fall apart a little bit, and it starts to get a little bit too close to the cliche and close to the genre, everything with the petrol station. But what I will say is the juxtaposition of him being in the mainland with his father and him being in the mainland with his mother, and the brightness and the darkness of the lush green landscapes are incredibly distinct. And that's Boyle with a keen eye of like, when you look at this world through death and destruction, this is what it looks like. And that's him with his father. But when you look at this world through hope, even if it's motivated by a cancer just kind of eating her brain and she doesn't know where she is, but if you look at it through this eye of like, she's basically rediscovering humanity. She's rediscovering the things that she remembers. She's living in these memories that may or may not have existed, but they're now surrounded by flowers. They're surrounded by fields of gold. It's not desolate greens of grass and weed. And those things are very purposeful, and I definitely clued into those. So I think that is probably where I enjoyed the movie the most. And then the last thing I'll say is as much of a WTF moment as it was, the death cult satanic worshiping Teletubby ninjas showing up with a Jimmy style Remick with gold teeth and tracksuits. I was like, I don't know what movie this is, but I want this now. This is I want this now.
I legitimately thought, did the projectionist change the channel?
I did too.
I love that ending so much.
But it's so funny because that ending is so off-putting for so many people. I mean, anyone who does say like that was a terrible movie is probably just thinking about like, I wasn't expecting that ending. What was that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, on my idea of subversion, I really just, whenever I watch a movie, my ethos about it is never. I'm trying to explain. I never want what I expect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's how I felt like about like Dune Part 2, for instance. Like I read the book already, and I'm like, okay, going in, and like the movie is I mean, I wouldn't say it's a radical change from the book, but there's definitely some decisions that like I was like, oh, that's cool. And I felt the same way with Years, where you know there's these really subversive. I mean, just the idea of making the second and third act of your zombie movie just basically family drama about just waiting for your mom to die is really smart, and I didn't expect it from. I mean, again, like the trailer sells it as like, you know, this terrifying white knuckle adventure through the mainland, and it's just like, I mean, once we get to the end, it's just like this kid burying his mom, and it's just so fucking depressing.
That was a very emotional sequence. Yeah,
I think it maintains a lot of the bleakness and hopefulness in that you get from 28 Days Later. But it does it by, and I said this, but I think this might be a compliment now, but it achieves those same themes and those same things by stripping it of its tension and stripping it of its like that pressure. Like you watch 28 Days Later, 28 Days Later, that's a pressure cooker. Even when they're in the taxi and they're just driving, like you get maybe 20 minutes of like, yeah, we're all just kind of enjoy each other's company. And then that shit does not stop for 90 minutes or however long that movie is. Like it is just from one scene to the next, like you were just trapped. And 28 years later, I think one of the reasons I like that first couple sequences is it really does do that, right? Every time you think the father and son are going to get a break, something else happens, and now they got to escape another trap. They got to escape another trap. They got to escape another trap, and they almost don't make it. But it does kind of open up the mind of Spike to a world he didn't know. He didn't know about alphas, So I like things that are I like bleakness. I'm dead inside, so for me, like I like movies that do that, where they're just like, yeah, dude, like humanity sucks, whether it's an apocalypse or not. Like being alive sucks, but we all still have to do it. So find hope somewhere. Like I like those kinds of things, and I think it does have that.
This is so fascinating. We'll go ahead and bring this to a close. So start thinking about what your final rating after this conversation is going to be. But just a quick note about marketing again. And I just don't know how to feel about this now, because I'm looking at your background, Derrick, and we now know what those skulls are meant for. And I'm trying to figure out, like, do I appreciate that they're positioned in the marketing so ominously, or was that a conscious decision to like explain this is actually a hopeful film, but you don't know that yet? Like,
definitely,
yeah. This background is if you haven't seen the movie and you haven't seen the trailers yet, first of all, I don't know why you're still here, but like this background, this marketing is not what happens in the movie. Like, this symbol is
misleading.
Yeah, I really like that you mentioned that, Derrick, because when we saw Fiennes in the trailer, he looks fucked up.
Yeah,
like, he looks like Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, and like he's like in this big bone. He's in the Bone Temple basically. And when we see the movie, like he's caked in all this garbage, like this red garbage, and zombie movie, you can like, oh, he's covered in blood, and we learn, oh, it's iodine because he's a doctor and it counteracts the virus. And his big bone temple, oh, he's just really sentimental.
Yeah, right? Like he's embraced death as a fact of life,
awesome.
So he lives among the living in the dead, which is just wild.
Yeah,
like it's
Memento Mori, baby.
Yep.
So interesting. There's so much more that we could talk about.
I really scratched the surface.
I have to see this movie a second time. We might do a follow-up episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I
am genuinely, I did not think that I was going to leave here thinking like, oh, I should watch it again. I really might.
Yeah.
Like I'm supposed to write my piece today, but I might just go see it again before I put pen to paper.
But before we close off, can I at least bring up one point that I just wanted to chime in on really quick?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
So I like that we've been talking about the isolationism of the island. And I did find out recently that the island is real. The causeway is real. That's all totally 100% accurate. Like you can just cross the causeway at low tide. That's the thing that can happen. But something that I noticed on Holy Island is that they have a framed photo of Lizzie, Queen Elizabeth, and they're not flying the Union Jack. Mm-hmm. And that really combined with the Boots poem and the archive footage of Laurence Olivier's Henry V, it really exemplifies the idea of British isolationism, especially post-Brexit. And it really puts into perspective how Boyle and Garland feel about that, and how, the idea of just isolationism just doesn't work if you're trying to have a humanist angle on things. And and with the framed photo of Lizzie, it's the idea. It's kind of like the opening scene where just shut up and watch Teletubbies. Don't think about what's going on in the real world. Lizzie's still alive. Everything's okay.
Yeah,
it's just
you can't
the delusion.
You can't embrace humanity in isolation, however much you want to.
Exactly.
And that's why that doctor is just so unique, because he is doing that. He's doing the thing that you can't do. He is lonely. He is all by himself, and yet he is still, even surrounded by the bones of the dead, is still embracing life. And it's such a juxtaposition from how people are living on the island to how he's living on the mainland. I'm gonna have to see this movie again. Damn it.
He's like my favorite zombie movie character. Like, it's just so awesome. Like how he's like, well, these are kind of people too, and he doesn't kill the giant evil man when he has like 2 opportunities to just cut the dude's head off. It's like, no, like this is a creature who lives its life, and I'm not the one to get rid of it.
Yeah, he just sedates them and fucks off.
Yeah. He names them.
He did.
He fucking named it.
Fucking Samson.
I thought that was also great, like having a biblical name, like Samson, and how we had like the long hair, and how Samson's power.
How
like,
are there
lost
so
when he
many
cuts his
layers
hair.
to this movie? I don't understand.
Didn't catch
Like,
that. Thank you,
man.
Ethan.
I was raised in the Jesus cult, so I catch these biblical references when they show up.
I was too, and so I should have picked up on that, but now
Yeah.
it makes a ton of sense.
You guys would like my buddy Jimmy. He's great.
Oh my gosh.
That just went over my head. What do you mean, Jimmy?
Jack O'Connell.
Right.
Yeah. That boy is having a moment, man. He's gonna start
Yes.
next year off the heels of being one of the greatest villains of the year in 2025, with potentially one of the greatest villains of 2026. And I'm all in on Jack O'Connell, dude.
Part of me is wondering if they'll bring it up to December, like, and see, like, put it around like Christmas, just a couple weeks early, and see how it performs. Because if this film like has a lot of legs right now, maybe we could have the Year of the Matrix Part 2, but it's the year of the 28 years later.
I won't say no.
Right?
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it. I'd watch it, especially now that I might actually like this movie.
Mhm.
This was a very important conversation for you two.
Thank you,
Coming of age
thank
story.
you, Gen Z, for educating us.
It is. I know. Yeah, thank you for taking
We're
us to
useful
the
for
mainland
something.
and showing us what life is like.
Ethan and I are the Aaron Taylor Johnson and Jodie Comer to U2's Spike.
We push you into the
We brought you to the
reality.
mainland.
Listen, no, this is great because I haven't felt young in a really long time. So
I know.
this is a really good thing for me, guys.
I'm really
That's
digging
funny because 28 years later made me feel old.
For that to be done by like filmmakers in their like 50s, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the movie like, fuck, it's been 5 years since the pandemic started.
Yeah.
I know. It's crazy.
Don't tell
Oh
me.
my
Don't
God.
remind me.
This is wild. What a wild conversation, guys. I was not expecting that to be as insightful and like mind changing as it has been. I'm gonna go ahead and start with my final thoughts. I think this conversation absolutely warrants a second view, and I don't know if I'm gonna change my rating. I have no idea, but like you guys have given me some very interesting things to think about, and I'm so conflicted now about how I felt about watching this movie. I don't know. I was at a 2.5. Now my speculation and apprehension about that is pushing me towards a 3. Could I walk out of this movie on a second viewing at 4 stars? Oh, I don't know.
I hope so.
That's on the third time.
That's on the third time.
Ethan just wants you to make this movie your whole personality. So
You know what? Look, if Sinners wasn't a thing this year already, I
That's
might,
true.
because Sinners is my personality right now. But this is so interesting, and I'm really happy that people are leaving very positive on it, and that I get to have conversations with those people. So I am anywhere between a 2.5 and a 4. We will see how my next
So broad, I
screening
love it.
goes. Right, Luca, what's your final thoughts and your rating?
Well, what are we? We're about like an hour and 8 minutes into the episode, and I just barely I haven't even scratched the surface of this movie. It's again, it is so layered, it is so dense. There is so much to talk about it. Fuck, man.
It's like Batman v Superman. You just keep pulling back layers.
I mean, honestly, like, just I don't know. Just the way that it makes me think about the world, just at large, and how we've been affected by COVID. Because again, you can't talk about 28 days later or 28 years later without even mentioning the fact that COVID is what brought the franchise back in the first place. Like Garland and Boyle, the pandemic happened, and they were like, "Wait, I think there's something more to mine here." And so, it's put the past 5 years into perspective. And again, like with the Bone Temple, I was I'll make this quick. But I was watching like just like I don't know, they posted like a scene from the new Final Destination where just like a bunch of people die, and I'm going like, haha, that's funny. And then like I see the Bone Temple, and I'm like, oh fuck, wait, those are people. And so like
Mhm.
as a horror fan, we get so ingrained in like the kills and the kill count and all that stuff, you know. But like we forget that these are people. And I think just the sentimentality of 28 years later is probably why it makes it one of my favorite zombie movies ever.
That's profound.
Thank you.
Ethan, what's your final thoughts and rating?
For the record, Batman v Superman I think is a good movie, but I
knew there was something sus about you. I knew it.
There isn't the way I used to like give stars and ratings all the time, but I kind of just cut that out, and now I just do a log with a heart, or log with heart and 5 stars, because the reason I do that now is to try to encourage myself to write more and think more about the movie rather than applying just like a label.
I support
but
this.
I would give it 5 stars and a heart. I think it's in my top 3 of the year, with Sinners and Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Final Reckoning.
They're the same.
The title change got you too.
Yeah, and then Chuck at 4. But I think it's so engaging, and I think this is again, like Sinners, something that we're going to be talking about for a while, not just because it's going to get sequels. I think even if it didn't have 2 more upcoming movies, and they didn't have the tracksuit ninjas at the end, like, and they just kept it as one thing, we would still be talking about this thing for a while. There's just so much in there, and the fact that I feel like this has been an hour and 10 minutes. I feel like I've been here for 5. Like, there's just so much to go over here, and whether a film has a lot of ideas, and whether they stick the landing or not, I think it's interesting to visit a film on its own terms and try to see what it's trying to tell you and what you can learn from it, especially when it's in a sequel and in a very oversaturated genre at this point. And that's why I think we should handle this one with care.
Mm-hmm.
If that's
I like the way you put that one. Handle with care.
Yeah, handle with care. You're right.
Wow. Derrick, bring us home. What is
well, you can see
what's happening in your head now.
I know, you can see the light in my life just died. So I gave it a 3 when I had walked away from it originally. Because like I said, I still maintain this even if it goes higher, but this is not a bad movie. There were a lot of things that I don't think really worked for me, but now I think upon a rewatch after this discussion, they might. I honestly, I could take all of this into this movie and still walk away and be like, yeah, you know what? These issues are still just too big for me. But I do think that this conversation is incredibly fruitful. And anytime you have a film that almost requires this kind of discussion, you're onto something regardless of where your stars are. And I think, Ethan, you kind of brought up a really great point of like, hey, this is going to, I need to engage with this cinema a little bit more than just like, this is 3 stars and this is why, right? Like this is, there are things to talk about here. And no matter what side of the fence you fall on, like we still have to talk about it. It's like you guys have said it. We're almost an hour 15 now. And there are still plenty of things I want to talk to you guys about. Like there are plenty of scenes we haven't even covered. And we kind of, honestly, we brushed over the baby in broad strokes, but like, I got a lot more I want to talk about with the implications of what that means and why that exists. So, I think anytime you create something that breeds discussion, I think you have something really special, and it almost doesn't even matter where you fall as far as your stars go. That's what cinema is supposed to do, right? Like we're supposed to walk out of the movie and want to talk about it. And, there are certain movies that don't try to do that. And I think bad movies are movies that when you go and see, as soon as you're done, you have no desire. I don't call Thomas and talk to him about the movie. I don't want to jump on a podcast and talk about a movie. And those are things that don't fill you with any kind of emotion, any kind of anything, right? It's just visuals and that's it. So when you can imbue all of your visuals with something that is meaningful, and whether that meaning resonates or not almost doesn't even matter, you walk away saying, hey, I need to call someone. I need to get on a podcast. We need to talk about this because I have things I want to say. I think that's really important. And I think, yeah, in a world where, if Sinners didn't exist, I think this could be a movie that we would be talking about a lot more and for a lot longer. Fortunately, you're under the umbrella of the Sinners phenomenon that will make its claim in culture and the cultural zeitgeist for, probably the next couple decades, if I'm being honest. But all that to say, I walked away at a 3. After this discussion, even without seeing it, I could be swayed to a 3.5. I think if I see it again, there's a potential to be a 4. So anywhere in between that range, I think anywhere between a 3 and a 4, I think that's probably where I'm going to end up falling.
Yeah, how wild. This is a great conversation. Guys, I appreciate you coming on. Ethan, Luca, Derrick, thank you guys so much for this conversation. Appreciate that. Appreciate everyone who's listening as well. If you want to find more content from these wonderful content creators and film critics and writers, you can always find all of that at thisisforreal.com. ForReel, of course, spelled FORREEL. And yes, thanks again for listening. We will see you next week on For Real. Let me do this. This looks fun.